Well, hello everybody. This is Louise Edington. Some of you have met me before, and I'm here today to speak about Jupiter retrograde. But before I do, I just wanted to acknowledge that the moon is full, actually, right now, this second. And I kind of find it strange that I started late, and we started right on the full moon. And I kind of find that really appropriate, because I don't think we can separate this Jupiter retrograde from this full moon, really, because he's tied into the full moon and to all the energies going forward. So how this is going to play out is I'm going to share some charts. I'm going to share a chart. I'm actually going to look at the full moon chart, seeing as I'm starting on the full moon. And I'm going to look at the chart for the station retrograde for Jupiter. And I'm also going to look at some major transits through the time. I'm going to look what Jupiter in Scorpio retrograde means and look at the chart when he turns direct. And then we're going to do a shamanic journey to Jupiter at the end of that. So let me get the charts. Okay, now the first one is actually my chart, and the reason I thought I'd share that, just because this is an astrology podcast or video or webinar, whatever you want to call it, and I did want to show astrology in action. And if I look a little bit tired and worn today, it's kind of late in the day where I am, and this is what's happening on my chart right now, and Jupiter is my ruling planet. I have my Saturn return is exact right now, my first conjunction of my second Saturn return. I have Mars on my 12th house sun, and the full moon is forming a grand cross in my chart. So I'm feeling if I'm a little bit like, it's because I'm really being Neptuned and Saturned and Marsed right now. So I'm feeling a little tired, a little achy, a little bit tired. So I just thought I'd show you a bit of astrology in action. I'm not going to talk at length about the full moon, because I'm sure you've all read lots about it, and I think everybody here is pretty much astrologers also. But I did want to look at Jupiter's place in the full moon, because he stations retrograde in just a week's time on March the 8th. And so he's a few minutes away from his retrograde station place. And in this full moon, he's trining Venus, Mercury, and Chiron over there in Pisces. And so this we're starting to really feel the slowing down of the waves, if you like, the real, some waves come crashing in. These are starting to really roll. We're really feeling this slowing down. We've had all the planets, other than Chiron, direct for quite some time. Chiron stayed retrograde for a little while. And so we've been full speed ahead. We've been crazy through these eclipse times, and now we're starting to slow down as we head into this Jupiter retrograde, and also then a Mercury retrograde, and then eventually by the end of Jupiter's retrograde we have pretty much everything going retrograde. So I just wanted to look at that first. Okay, so the Jupiter station. The Jupiter stations retrograde on March the 8th at about 9:46 p.m. Mountain Time here in Utah. I haven't done all the time differences, so it'll be March the 9th for many of you, especially Linda and everybody. And he stations retrograde at 23 degrees and 13 minutes of Scorpio. And he stations retrograde still aspecting Chiron. I am at 4 degrees. I'm still going to give him that orb. And also aspecting Pluto with Mars close to the midpoint, and Vesta at the midpoint pretty much as well of the retrograde. And Mars is significant as well on the station retrograde chart, because really Mars and Jupiter are kind of in a mutual reception, with Mars being the traditional ruler of Scorpio and Jupiter being the ruler of Sagittarius. And so he's aspecting both the traditional ruler of, or is in mutual reception with, and making sort of an aspect to Mars and Pluto, both the old and new rulers of Scorpio. So this is making this doubly powerful to my mind. He's also in an inconjunct aspect to Eris over there in Aries, on the right, the goddess of discord, or I like to see her as revealer of artifice. If you read the myth, and from what my observations have been about Eris, she really is about revealing where people are put on a show, the fakery, the emphasis on how things look on the outside and on beauty and fakery. And she is the real revealer of that, and has been for for all our lives pretty much in Aries. But she's being triggered by this quincunx, or inconjunct. And he's also opposite dwarf planet Sedna over there in Taurus on this station retrograde. So this is, to my mind, is a very powerful retrograde. I guess I probably feel it a lot because he is my ruling planet, as I'm a quadruple Sagittarius with Sagittarius rising. So I'm definitely very Jupiter ruled, and it's all, he's at the top of my chart in the 10th house for this, so I feel it a lot. But let's look a little bit at what Jupiter in Scorpio means first of all. So really, kind of Jupiter and Scorpio really kind of they don't really go together in some ways, you could say, because keywords you could say for Jupiter are expansion and growth and all those kind of getting bigger kind of words, if you like, extremes and seeking, and everything's kind of out there, looking for higher consciousness, looking for higher truths, the philosopher, all that kind of energy. That's very Jupiter. Whereas Scorpio is very inward, very private, and the inner landscape is really the prime place of Scorpio. The inner thoughts, the kind of investigation, the shadow, and it's our deeply bonded relationships, of course. And we've all witnessed how Jupiter moved into Scorpio and started kind of expanding those depths and digging them up in conjunction with Pluto over there in Capricorn, and showing the Me Too movement and revealing the seedy underbelly and the corruption and the nastiness that's down there. But this is not all just about darkness and nastiness. There is, in Scorpio, there is the hidden treasure, I like to call it as well. The kind of the parts of ourselves that we keep very private and that don't like to show to many people, and it's great depth, which is really important. We don't want everything out there that's all fluffy and light. Well, I don't anyway. I like depth and I like death and rebirth and all those kind of energies that come with Scorpio. I find them fascinating, along with like psychological transformation and the deep healing power of Scorpio. So I actually love Jupiter retrograde in Scorpio, because when he's moving forward, he's really kind of digging out and kind of going, let's get this out there and let's get this done. But the retrograde, he's kind of going to bring us back in and kind of really slow us down and get us to really look for that buried treasure. Now, I like to think of Jupiter retrograde in Scorpio as opening doors that we didn't think we were looking for, if you like. So, we can be walking along and think we're going off in one direction, and kind of unexpected opportunity comes our way through Jupiter retrograde as something that really causes us to pause and look within and say, does this really have deeper meaning for me? Depth of meaning, to my mind, is very much Jupiter in Scorpio, particularly in the retrograde period. So I find that I feel that Jupiter retrograde is going to be a time where we kind of bring in this real focus, or it's brought to us from the outside. These opportunities come up. The entire time we realize we've been kind of looking out there, and then we start to really, really look in and find that buried treasure and find something that we really, really, really want. But it might be something that really kind of scares the bejesus out of us, if you like. And with the energy of depth and transformation that's also happening, and with Mars in Sagittarius saying, like, let's get out there and get this done as well, and then Pluto in Capricorn excavating any shoulds in our life. I like to think not only is Pluto in Capricorn excavating our institutions, our governments and things like that, and showing us the corruption and getting rid of what doesn't work and bringing all that stuff to the surface, along with Jupiter in Scorpio. At a personal level, I think to my mind, Pluto in Capricorn has really been asking us to dig deep and see where we're living by the shoulds. By, you should do this. This is what I should do. This is what I was brought up to do. This is what my family expected me to do. This is what the culture says I should do. Pluto for many years has been digging all this up. Of course, the Uranus-Pluto square, which is still pretty close thanks to Eris, I think, has been disrupting a lot of that. But at an inner personal level, I think because Jupiter is a more transpersonal planet, not just the outer planet, I feel he is expanding that inner transformation to stop living by the shoulds and to live by your inner buried treasure and your inner depths and your inner truth. Okay. So that's the chart that takes him into retrograde. Okay, so I want to look at a couple of other charts. And on April the 23rd, I didn't quite get it right. It's to Mars that they're exact. I didn't quite get it right at the time. But Mars by then has moved into Capricorn. And he meets up with Pluto, and they both aspect Jupiter on April the 23rd, around that day. Those few days around that time are probably going to be the most challenging and I believe the most rewarding time of the whole retrograde. This is going to be the time where we're really kind of dragged down into our depths, and things might be revealed that we weren't prepared to look at initially. But being the Miss Positive astrologer that I do, I think that I am, I do think that this is going to be an immense time of inner personal empowerment and personal growth. Add to that, that on that same aspect, we've got the moon over there in Leo, squaring Jupiter. And of course, that's been bringing us to this whole follow your heart energy of the eclipses that we had, the last two eclipses and the ones back in August and the total eclipse here in the US. We've been really asked to strip bare and to go in to find out what we really want to follow by our heart, what we want to dispose of, what's no longer working, what we want to excavate and throw away. There's a real purging energy to this as well. But I feel it's more like a psychological purging rather than the full moon in Virgo is, you know, a lot of people are cleaning out the material in their world. But this is a more of a psychological purging. What deeply bonded relationships no longer work? What psychological patterns no longer work for us? What do we not want to take forward anymore once Jupiter goes direct? And once we've really, if we follow these energies and really allow them to dig into this buried treasure, we will be able to really follow our heart. So that, as I said, would be the most challenging time of the retrograde. So as a reminder for everybody, you might want to, you know, I don't like to fear everybody, but I always find that if I know these challenging energies are coming up, that I manage them a lot better. Like my Saturn return today. I've had some real crazy times coming up with this full moon and this Saturn return exactly happening today. I won't go into it, but it's made me create a lot of boundaries that I did not have before. Let's put it that way. And start to shift a lot of things in my life. So on May the 25th, we're kind of coming towards the end of the retrograde on May the 25th. And we have the second of 3 Jupiter-Neptune trines that I talked about in a previous EA Zoom presentation, actually. And that is kind of going to, we're near the end of our excavations, and here comes Neptune bringing in spirit and bringing in the creativity. And this is going to be a deeply emotional time, I think, with this aspect on at the end of May. But it's going to be a time where we're really starting to feel the pull towards what we really have faith and belief in. We've kind of dug in and we're finding that buried treasure, and we're going, oh man, yeah, this is really starting to feel like I'm finding my depths. I'm feeling empowered, and I'm starting to have trust and faith in myself, my inner strength, because my personal beliefs are, you know, we're all stardust, and we are all God, really, because you know, we're all connected with everything. So I don't see God as something out there. We are God, you are God, we're all connected. And you know, we're starting to really know this if we really step into that. Of course, that will really come into fruition later in the year. You know, we're kind of really barreling right now into this in this birth canal of the moving into this age of Aquarius. We're really moving into it at warp speed, it feels like. I mean, does anybody ever else think, you know, like, how did we get to March the 1st already? In 2018, where did the rest of this year go already? It's like just everything is just moving bam 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 so fast. And I picture it in my mind. I'm very visual, and I like to kind of give these visual representations that I can see kind of it's almost like my baby head going down going down the birth canal of the age of Aquarius, and there's that light coming into this new age. I just really kind of feel like we're being squeezed out of it, and we're suddenly gonna. Has anybody seen that video going around about that shows a balloon that shows how the cervix kind of loosens and we give birth, and how suddenly it just suddenly lets go? We're at the bit where it's kind of like just opening up. I'd say we're probably about, I don't know, 6-7 centimeters dilated for those of you that have given birth. Sorry, I've given birth, and I was a bit of an earthy, crusty mama who had a home water birth. So I'm very into all these kind of analogies, and I think birth's a beautiful thing. And because Scorpio is very death and rebirth as well, and Pluto is, I feel like this retrograde is really kind of bringing us down into squeezing us with the contractions of this birthing of this new age. You know, that's not to say it's all going to be over as soon as Jupiter goes direct. I kind of agree with some astrologers that the age of Aquarius is going to really begin when Pluto moves into Aquarius, and that's when things are really going to kick in. But this is a huge step towards it, another huge step towards it. I was going to talk about Sedna too. I didn't talk about Sedna's part in all this. Does everybody know the myth about Sedna and kind of what Sedna represents? And I'm going to talk about it anyway, so it doesn't matter. Sedna was a goddess, an Alaskan Inuit goddess, and she had kind of a gory story. She was kind of married off to this brutal god by her father, and then to cut a long story short, she ended up kind of getting her father to, or she told her father she didn't want to marry him or something. I can't remember the exact beginning of it, because I remember the gory end of it. And she was in a boat with her father, and she fell over the side, and he actually chopped her fingers off so that she couldn't climb back in the boat. And then she drowned, and then she became immortal, a goddess. And after that point, she was the goddess of kind of the ocean harvest, if you like. So in a way, it's kind of a similar story to some of the other goddesses. You know, the female treated very badly, like Lilith, became vengeful. She had to be kind of adored and treated really well, or there would be no fish to eat in the ocean, things like that. I always take these stories with a little bit of a pinch of salt, because they're written from the patriarchal perspective, as the female always being bad, the female always being the vengeful, nasty kind of person. And that's very Scorpionic to my mind as well, if you see it, because Scorpio has the reputation for being this vengeful, obsessive, kind of sting in the tail kind of energy. And it does have that side to it, of course. But of course, men and women all have Scorpio in them. So Sedna is in Taurus, and to my mind, she is really she's kind of leading the way into our focus on back onto Mother Earth, and how we are going to revolutionize and change our approach to Mother Earth. And Uranus will move in there on May the 15th into Taurus and start revolutionizing that change as well. But this opposition to Scorpio, to Jupiter in Scorpio on the retrograde, I think is actually probably quite possibly going to cause some more flooding, some more earth movement, some more kind of mudslidey kind of energy parts of the world. But I don't. I prefer to talk about the what it's doing to the soul, because that's what we do in evolutionary astrology. And I think she's going to start to deepen our connection back to nature. I've been predicting it for quite a long time, and I think this Jupiter retrograde is a big part of it. That part of this digging within and finding our inner gold and what's really, really meaningful for us is going to be a lot of people starting their own like food gardens, their cottage gardens, kind of bringing it back in a little bit to things that really mean something, to really connecting with the earth again and connecting with our deepest emotions again, instead of this cold kind of patriarchal education matters, degrees matter, all that kind of stuff. I really think people are going to start to bring it back to basics, and that kind of brings it back to that real purging kind of energy again as well. This energy of digging out what we don't need. You know, do you really need the big house? You know, do you really need to go out and do this fancy job? I shared a video earlier today about a guy. I've actually seen him roller skating up and down the seafront in San Diego in the USA, and he kind of had this big spiritual awakening due to his eyesight going, and he gave up his career in neurology and all this kind of stuff, and his Ferrari and all those trappings that we're taught, and that basically he said made him an asshole. but he gave all this up and lived in a little studio apartment and just did what brought him joy. He skated, roller skated, and he still does to this day, roller skates all the time, and he's got this meditative flow to it. This, to my mind, I saw it as emblematic of the energies of this full moon, but also of this looming Jupiter retrograde. He went deep within and found his buried treasure and found what really, really had meaning for him and what really, really brought him joy. So, sorry, this is me more in my, I didn't do slides. This is more how I present normally. I just kind of flow and channel, if you like. It's much how I prefer to do it. So I decided not to do slides. I decided just to do the charts, because that's what we're talking about, the astrology, and just talk. So the station direct is on July the 10th. Okay. And as you can see around the chart, when Jupiter stations direct, we'll have Chiron already in Aries, okay, which is interesting. Uranus will have moved into Taurus. We're going to have a big shift in energy just before Jupiter goes direct. And Neptune will be retrograde. Chiron has moved into Aries and will be retrograde. Mars will be retrograde, okay, over there in Aquarius. Saturn will also be retrograde. Pluto will be retrograde. So when Jupiter goes direct, we'll have been slowed down in so many other ways. So even though Jupiter is this kind of expansive, shoot your arrows out there and grow, this big gas giant that makes everything bigger, and he's Mr. Optimism, it's not going to be full speed ahead, because we're going to have so much else retrograde. Now, when he goes direct on July the 10th, he will be square to Mercury over there in Leo. And I find that interesting because Mercury is at the degree that the North Node was at in the last two eclipses. The North Node of fate, our collective future, where we were heading. So I really feel that this square is kind of triggering some of the energy of the two eclipses just before we head into the next eclipse season. And because it's our Mercury, our communication, our mind, our information, I think there's going to be something with this square that challenges us as Jupiter turns direct, to remind us of what the eclipse has brought out for us, and where it's kind of a real reminder, if you like, of, are you truly following your heart's desire? Are you truly living in joy? You know, I really feel we are meant to live in joy and to follow our bliss, as Joseph Campbell said, and to move forward in this kind of flow. And that's what astrology helps us to do. Add to that the moon is in Mercury ruled Gemini. Add kind of an inconjunct. I really think at the end, as the planet stations direct, and we all know that, I hope we all know, if we don't, I'm going to tell you that a planet is always the strongest at his station, either station retrograde or station direct. That kind of still point from our perspective is always kind of the most powerful time. The aspects to the Mercury in Leo and the moon in Gemini are going to kind of bring something to our attention that we really need for taking the lessons of the whole retrograde forward, so that we don't kind of just slip back into our old ways. So we don't give up all the things we've worked on, all this inner gold we've found, and all this purging quality. On a kind of lighter level on all this, the whole Jupiter retrograde will be a really good time for anything really focused and internal. It will be a really good time for anything that kind of needs a little bit of obsession, if you like, for really changing your diet, for really kind of, going keto or something like that, and really kind of cutting things out of your life that you really want to do, so that you improve your health, improve everything in your life. Also a good time for cutting out relationships that are no longer working. So that went quicker than I expected, I have to say. And I think I kind of garbled it a bit because we started a bit late, but that's okay, because we're going to do a nice journey. But I just wondered if anybody had any questions before I do the drumming. If that's all right, Linda. I don't know if that's okay with you to do it that way round.
Of course, that's fine. Any questions, anyone?
You can also ask questions after the drumming too, if you want.
Okay, let's do the drumming. Great.
Okay. Now I have a nice picture if anybody doesn't want to shut their eyes, of Jupiter. I don't know if you saw that NASA had released these new pictures today, and just the magnificence of Jupiter just always amazes me. All those patterns, the swirly gas giant patterns, and the fact that the big red spot they've found is absolutely disappearing on Jupiter. All these things, getting to know the planet itself really kind of helps me to really understand the energies. So I'll just get my drum. Thanks. And a cup of tea. Okay, so if you'd all like to close your eyes and just sit comfortably with both feet on the ground if you can. I'm going to actually drum for you today, and I'm going to drum for about not quite 15 minutes, but almost 15 minutes, because I just want to finish on time, and I do want to leave a couple of minutes for any questions if anybody has any. So we're going to actually journey if you haven't journeyed before with me, we're going to journey to Jupiter and just ask Jupiter what you need to know for this retrograde for yourself. It doesn't matter whether you know where Jupiter in Scorpio is retrograding in your chart. I think probably most of you do. Jupiter will tell you in the journey anyway what you need to know. So when you should do a shamanic journey like this, you picture yourself in kind of a starting spot. Mine is kind of a meadow, and you look for a way up. Mine is I fly up on the back of an eagle. Some people go up a beanstalk or a ladder or some steps, a staircase. It could be anything like that. And then let the journey and the music take you up. You'll probably have a guide go with you. Always trust what you get. Trust what shows up. You know, I'm quite established with my power animals and my guides. So, you know, I know which guides usually are with me, but sometimes an unusual one shows up. So trust whatever guide shows up and ask them to help you with the guide, with the journey. Go up to Jupiter. Take a look around, pay attention to everything that's happening around you. There's kind of messages in everything when you get up there, what you see, what it looks like. Is there any flora, fauna, animals? Are there any people on Jupiter? Does it manifest as an animal or a person? And then just talk to and ask questions and ask what you need to know. Towards the end of the journey, the drumming will just change slightly. And that will be your callback. That will be your message to say thank you. Please thank whoever you talk to up on Jupiter, or Jupiter himself, and come back to your starting spot. Okay, and just enjoy the journey and the flow. I normally cannot journey while I'm drumming for other people, but I kind of went off on one on my own there. And for myself, I know that Jupiter was telling me I really do need some retreat time. Not, I don't have to go permanently on retreat, but you know, I'll be on and off disabling my main Facebook account and spending some time up in the mountains and doing some real alone time for over the next few weeks. Would anybody like to ask any questions or share what Jupiter told them? You see a little head.
I will.
Hi.
Hi, Louise. It's Sue.
Oh, hi, Sue.
I also don't usually. I have a hard time with doing journeys in groups, but this time it was like I immediately jumped in. I was taken up these stairs that were like diagonally across my vision field. And it was like I was just kind of joyfully just kind of running up these stairs. And I got there, and at the top it was a little murky, but then it was like I was invited to get onto this giant bird. And I figured out it was probably an eagle, and the message, part of the message was to kind of step back and get more of an eagle's eye view of, a wider view of things. There was a little bit more, but that was the main part of it. Thank you. That was fun.
Kind of like the higher perspective thing. That is what the eagle represents anyway, really.
Yeah, it was a little scary. I was having a hard time, getting on and letting it take off. And that was another part of it was, allowing it and, going with the flow and that sort of thing.
Awesome.
It was great. Thanks.
Love it. Cool. Anybody else like to share? If not, I'm kind of, that's me done.
Okay, thank you so much, Louise. That was fantastic.
You're welcome.
Thanks from all of us.
Doing these.
So how long are you going away for on your holiday?
Oh, not long. I'll be going up for little trips.
You're contactable still?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, keep connected. Thank you so much from all of us. See you next time.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Louise. That was just great.
Oh, thanks, Wanda.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hey, everybody.
Good. Excellent.